Folks, thank you so much for your patience in the link mix-up. We're not exactly sure what happened, but we're so grateful that you were able to get the correct link and hop on with us. If you would introduce yourself in the chat and give us 3 words or phrases you associate with feedback. Reflection, improvement, specific, positive, encouraging, informative. Individual, specific, time consuming. High quality, frequent, action based. I love these words or phrases. Useful, constructive, building relationships. I feel like you guys are right on target. How about you, Linda?
I do too, yes, definitely. Some good thoughts.
Useful, I love useful, Linda. Well, thanks, folks, for joining us. Again, we apologize for our link mix-up there, but so glad you're able to hop on with us. Welcome to your Affinity group. This is session 1 of feedback. In case you guys need today's resources, there is a link that I will drop right here in the chat. You're able to get the participants guide and any other materials that are discussed today from there. So if you would like the participants guide, you can click there. You're able to print it, or you're welcome to just type on it online. All right, Linda, take it away.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited to have you joining us today for the Lead Teacher Collaborative. This is Affinity Group session 1 of the second round for feedback. And during this, we will be giving you high impact strategies and models and practices that will help you to facilitate teaching and learning in both the virtual world and in the traditional classroom. My name is Linda, and this is Brandy helping. We're working on this today, and we're so thankful to have you. I know you've had a long day, and we appreciate you taking time out of your afternoon to be with us today. And then when we look at Zoom, I know we're all very familiar with it, I'm sure, but just remember, if you could keep your mute on unless you want to ask a question or add to the conversation, it'll just cut down on background noise. And then of course we're going to be using the chat feature today, so be cognizant of that. And if you want to show us your lovely face, we'd love to get to see it. So without further ado, let's get started.
All right, this Lead Teacher Collaborative, which you have seen these slides before in both of the Affinity groups that you've previously attended. And we hope to build a sense of community among all of our schools, so give you an opportunity to collaborate and see the faces of other educators that are part of this grant as well. Offer opportunities to reflect and share about our rural life work. And we know that teachers are so appreciative of hearing from other teachers who are facing and overcoming the same struggles that they are. And so again, why we were pushing so diligently and strongly to have this Lead Teacher Collaborative, and also to engage in professional learning. And what we love about this is, which we'll talk about in just a second, literacy and personalized learning is part of the Rural Life Grant. And we would like to personalize this for you as well. So we took your feedback to build the 4 affinity groups that we have, which Linda will speak to. Again, you have seen this before. The Rural Life Grant takes the literacy and personalized learning to push and support improvement in middle grades literacy, and to support those high outcomes for students, and especially to bring in the research and best practice piece to your classroom.
So we started out in November and had our first meeting together. And from that first meeting, we just looked at the feedback that you gave. And we started out with these affinity groups in January and February. Then we met again as a collective and in February. And now we're working on the March and April affinity groups. And we got all of this information for the affinity groups or the targets from the November session when we were talking with Leading Edge Learning and when we did the Jamboard. So that's where all of this is coming from. And feedback was one of the areas that lead teachers really expressed a need and wanted to work on. So the lead teachers wanted more information about effective feedback and how to implement that feedback seamlessly in their practice. So please note that this learning was personalized just for you because these are things that you asked for. So for today's session, we will collectively define feedback and look at some of your authentic feedback and analyze its effectiveness. And then in our session 2 journey, we will talk about tech tools that will help you streamline feedback. And we will share some of our own successes and challenges with effective feedback.
And just to reiterate what Linda said, in practicing what we preach, so to say, we really took to heart what lead teachers shared during that November collective meeting. And when it came down to feedback, there were questions about what is effective feedback, and then how do I apply that into practice more streamlined without being so overwhelming, which were some of the words that were shared in the opening activity. So here we go.
So for today, our objectives are to build a collective definition of effective feedback. What is feedback? Why? Explore the research and articulate your why, and we will create a group definition. And if you'll notice, there is a brick, mortar, and whatever that little tool is called, in the bottom left. And whenever you see that little icon on the screen, that's going to go with our first objective. And the second objective is to analyze examples of feedback and determine their effectiveness. And that goes with the magnifying glass in hand. And then last of all, we want to craft some examples of effective feedback in line with the research and the best practices. And you see a quilt there. So we're going to be using that icon for building together. So
what is feedback? Feedback is information about how a person is doing as they work towards a goal. As they work, folks, let's remember that. It supports the learning process. So there's another big word, process. It guides students towards building new knowledge and increasing their skills. And it helps students identify what they can improve on in order to reach their goals. So want to point out that it's that last bullet, it's not the end goal, but it's to help ensure they reach those goals.
Just a second. There we go. So research says that feedback is not advice, praise, or evaluation. Feedback is information about how we're doing in our efforts to reach a goal. So it's not advice. It's not me telling you what I think, my advice and what you should do. It's not praising you. Great, great, great. And it's not giving you a grade at the end. It's not evaluative. These are all things that I can help the students with by giving them good feedback. Then they'll know that I'm not judging them. I am working on helping them to get a better grade and a better understanding of what's going on. So this is really used to help a student reach a goal. That's very important that they reach the goal that they set out for themselves. And I want you to think about this in your own practice. When you've graded students' papers in paper, you've just graded, told them, oh, great, great job, or not so good, and you give them the grade. What do students usually do with that paper? Trash can. They don't really look at it. So if I'm going to take the time to grade it and I'm going to give them some feedback, I would actually like for them to read that feedback and to look at it. Well, the best time for me to give that feedback is in the process of their writing, not at the very end when it's over and done, and then give them some awesome feedback, because as we said, most of the time they're just going to trash it. So we need to make sure that we give feedback in the process of learning. It's just a better way, I think, for the student to grow and for you to grow in with them as well. So the person who wrote this quote, Wiggins, he's also known for his 7 keys of effective feedback, which we will be talking about a little bit later. And it's also, research also says that if students know the classroom is a safe place to make mistakes, they're more likely to use feedback for learning. And that's by William. He's best known for his work in formative assessment. Feedback is not a replacement for student relationships. And it's not a replacement for that classroom community that you have. But feedback is a byproduct of strong relationships. So in the process of building our classroom culture at the beginning of the year, or whenever you've been able to do it with this crazy year we've had, you need to make sure that you have strong relationships, build on those, and then you can give them feedback that they can actually use and will use, and hopefully won't take to heart when you explain to them why they need to change this particular part of their paragraph. But just keep in mind that the relationship is going to have to come first. And once you've got that built and if they feel safe, then they're going to be more willing to take risks in their work and to be more willing to try new things. So, be very cognizant of that.
And I also love how, Amy, you even mentioned that in the chat where your part of your 3 phrases was building relationships. So kudos to you, my friend.
Yes, definitely. Build those relationships. And it does take time, but it's time well spent, I think. So research also says that effective feedback occurs during the learning while there is still time to act on it. And that's by Chapis. Feedback, remember, should be ongoing. It should be consistent, and it should be actionable, just to name a few. And those 7 keys to effective feedback was part of your pre-work for today on that little Padlet. And this quote then just really reiterates that effective feedback occurs during the learning, when it can make a difference and have a better impact for them, because kids are looking for that grade at the end, no matter what. They want the grade. So, try to help them to get what their goal is.
And it goes back to when we first talked about feedback it's a process.
Yes, it is. Very much so. And the next bit of research is from Brookhart. Students need to know their learning target, the specific skill they're supposed to learn, or else feedback is just someone telling them what to do. So feedback should go with their target. So every student should have a target or a goal as to what they're doing. A good place to use that would be in learner profiles, and them having their own little notebook or however you take care of your learner profiles, and them setting a goal. But they have to understand the target. What are they trying to accomplish? Because they need to understand that. If they don't understand what an argumentative paper is, and I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to have to reteach that so that they understand that. So, excuse me, they have to know their learning target. If you don't give them those specific skills and those specific instructions as to what to do, it's just someone telling them what to do. And middle schoolers, do they really like to be told what to do? That was
At this point, do any of us like to be bossed around?
Yeah.
I have a quick question, just out of pure curiosity. Who within our small group here who has a district mandate that they have learner profiles or have to set goals with their students? Okay, quite a few of us. I know the county that I came from, we definitely did. We had learner profiles and we were required to set goals with our students. And it was eye-opening to me to see the difference in goal setting from one class to another. And just how goal setting can be just as ineffective as the feedback sometimes if it's not done properly. But just curious there. Yeah. So thanks so much for sharing with us in digging through the research. We also want to get into the why. I don't know if you're like me, but I'm so curious about what's the rationale here. I hear feedback. So why should I give feedback to students? What makes it helpful? Why should it be an integral part of my professional practice? And so we just want to take some time to share with you the why. Meaningful feedback can increase student learning as well as their motivation and engagement. And I know personally, in the beginning of the year, when most of us were hybrid or fully online, motivation and engagement were a struggle for lots of teachers. It also helps students build on their current knowledge base and promotes reflection on that. It gives alternate strategies to reach understanding and provides a connection between the teacher and student. And again, just want to reiterate that though it is a tool in which to build relationships, it's not how we should build relationships. It should be a byproduct of that. I would like you to take a moment to just have some personal reflection time. If we know that feedback is such a high leverage tool that we can use in our professional practice, do you see yourself implementing this strategy and why? You can use that participant's guide to jot down your personal reflections, and we're going to set a timer for about 2 minutes in order for you to do so. And just in case you are unable to get that participant's guide, I am going to drop that now in the chat box. So again, thinking back to the why, thinking back to the research, and thinking back to what we've shared about feedback, knowing that it's such a high leverage tool to use in your professional practice, why do you see yourself implementing this strategy? What is your why, and what would make you want to do this? We'll give you some quiet time to think. Was everyone able to get access to the participant guide? I sent it in the chat box, and this is what you should be seeing. And your box for my why is right there in the center of the page.
I had to request access.
All right, let me go into it one more time. You might want to refresh. That should work. Now, did you get in, Lynn? All right, folks, since you're not able to access the document, I'll work on that in just a moment, but we can talk through our why. Does anybody want to share out in the Brave space? There's absolutely no pressure, but does anyone want to share their why? Feel free to unpause or share in the chat box. I will share a personal story. After I received what I felt was very ineffective feedback after an observation, from then on, I realized just what a tool it was. They could have leveraged an opportunity for me to do so much better instead of just saying, that was a really good lesson. Well, why was it a good lesson? Because you're a new administrator and I want to know what you thought was good about it, because I want to do that again in my next lesson where you come in. And so to me, I realized then, just in reflection of, I wanted to, again, practice what I preached. And if I felt that way, I wanted to give my students the same opportunity. And if I thought they did a good job on a lesson, I wanted to tell them what I thought was a good job and why it was a good job, so they could also repeat that same strategy or same line of thinking. It improves learner confidence. I agree with that tremendously. And having learner confidence ensures that they are going to attempt more difficult and harder things. And so again, keeping those best practice strategies in mind and keeping that rigor in mind, that learner confidence can be a huge tool. We want learning and success. Mandy says, I do find that meaningful feedback can help improve connections with my students. Also, teaching students to give and receive meaningful feedback to each other promotes a positive and safe learning environment. That's something that we talk about in our second session. And Linda and I are huge believers in when it comes to creating that classroom community, Mandy. So we echo those thoughts. It builds a relationship of trust where students feel comfortable asking questions other times. I agree with that. Feedback is not grading you or judging you. If I feel like you're judging me, I'm on eggshells and scared to make a mistake. If I know that you're just going to promote and help me to do the correct thing and guide my thinking, I'm more apt to share out in class or to feel comfortable to do new and different things that I wouldn't normally do. So back to that relationship piece, which I love that you all have made that connection, because in other groups that we've done this, not that they haven't made that connection, but it's strong within this group. And I really appreciate that. Motivation, Wendy says, and help students progress toward achieving goals. And, you know, we want to begin with the end in mind. And for all of us, our goal as teachers is to educate and for those students to learn. And so that is our goal. And to know that we're working towards that end goal in mind of ours, and we therefore help them work towards their goals. It's, what would you say? We're simultaneously meeting both of our goals using feedback. Thanks so much for sharing out in this space. We know that sometimes it can be a little difficult to share our ideas, but we hope that with it being a smaller group that you do feel more comfortable in doing so. All right, so let's define feedback. So we've given you some research. We've talked about the why. We also shared a little bit about what feedback is. So keeping all of that in mind, what is feedback? Thus far, what's your thinking? Has your personal definition of feedback changed? And why do you feel feedback is most effective? We're going to take part in this Jamboard activity. And hopefully, after all of our trouble with internet links today. This one will not cause us any trouble. I am going to put it in the chat box. It is a Jamboard activity, and you'll see here that it just says keep or trash. And it has Webster's definition of feedback there in the middle. If you would please give me a thumbs up if you're able to access. After all these tech difficulties, I'm just so grateful. Awesome. So let's go over what we're going to do here. Again, keeping our previous conversation in mind, if you look here, the definition is in the middle. Again, that is from Webster. Feedback 1A, the transmission of evaluative or corrective information about an action, event, or process to the original or controlling force. Now, obviously, this isn't meant strictly for education, and we want to keep that education. I was trying to put educator and education together, but this education vein of thinking into practice here as we think about this definition. What should we keep as part of this definition, and what should we trash? If we want to build a collective understanding and have a group definition here to stand on to progress us through this session and next, let's make this definition our own. You can add a sticky note here if you've never used Jamboard. You see here on the left side of the toolbar, you just click that sticky note. You can type in whatever you'd like to share, hit save. It pops right up on the board, and you can move it to wherever you would like to move it. So it's easy to manipulate. You can change the size. You could choose your color. You can get wild and rotate it. So we're going to give about 3 to 4 minutes here for you to keep or trash some of these words within the definition. Any questions? All right, you are free to go.
Okay, I don't mean to be the problem child, but it says view only.
Oh, geez, are we really doing this again? Okay, see if you can refresh it, and that changed it. Let's keep tally of how many technology issues we have. Got it. Thanks, Lynn, for sharing that. Thanks so much for participating. I cheated a little and I add relative and timely to the middle here because I want to add those. I see we want to keep process, information, take out and trash evaluative, because we just learned that we don't want it to be a judgment. Corrective, change to supportive. Ooh, I like that. Supportive rather than corrective. A controlling force. Just that in general sounds like a bossy pants and has a very negative connotation. Take out corrective information again. I loved the suggestion to change corrective to supportive. So keeping that in mind, let's go back to our slideshow. And we said here, not evaluative, corrective information about a process that is relevant to student learning and outcomes. And we also shared is supportive instead of corrective information. So there we go, folks. This is our group definition of feedback that we will keep in mind to set our foundation for this session and next. All right, Miss Linda, take it away.
Righty. So, in order to engage in some authentic examples of feedback and to be able to strengthen examples, we need a shared understanding of what effective feedback should entail. So we're going to use what we've already discussed, such as the research, the definition, and the reasoning, along with a few tools to fully engage in our evaluations. One common tool that you all see and has been used for your evaluation is the Team General Education Rubric. Sorry about that, I lost my spot. Specifically to get a rating of significantly above expectations or a rating of 5, the evaluator must use feedback. And the feedback they use must be frequent, high quality, and academically focused. Given during guided practice and homework review, personalized to the student. So there's a lot going on with that. The teacher has to use this feedback to guide the next steps for their instruction. So note the last bullet. The teacher is empowering students to give feedback to one another. And that's a topic that we will discuss a little bit later. I'd also like to bring your attention to the bullet right above that. Feedback from students is regularly used to monitor and adjust instruction. So whether we realize it or not, we do get feedback from students, and it can be very helpful for us to be able to reach them. So we will talk more about that in our next session as well.
It's sometimes whether we realize we get it or not, or sometimes whether we want it or not,
Yep.
We still get feedback from those students.
We sure do. So here we have the 7 key effective feedback. I don't know, keys, I guess would be a good way to put it. So the first one is it's goal referenced. Make sure that it's part of what they're learning, their goal was. Make sure it's tangible and transparent, actionable. If they can't do anything with it, there's no point in giving it to them. So it needs to be actionable. It needs to be user-friendly, that they understand what you're talking about. It needs to be timely. And we're all ELA teachers, when you grade writing, you can't always get it back to them in 5 minutes or in even a day, because if you have 150 students' papers to grade, there's no way you're going to get it back as soon as you would really like to. So timely, it wouldn't have to be that you wait till the very end of that writing assignment to do the grading. As you're in the classroom and you're walking around and they're working on it, If you see something that's that needs to be corrected, or something that they're doing well, go ahead and, work on it then as well. You don't wait till the very end. So it needs to be timely. It needs to be ongoing. You need to do this frequently. You need to be up, moving around, watching those kids and seeing, I'm referring to writing, of course, to see what they're doing. And with you walking around and being more part of what they're working on, I think they're more apt to ask you questions and for help if you need it. And it needs to be consistent. You can't do it once and expect it to happen organically. You have to make sure that you continue to do that. So those are the 7 keys that we're looking at.
And Wiggins, folks, is such a guru when it comes to the feedback piece of education. So if you're not familiar with him, there are a couple of books out that you might want to familiarize yourself with. I don't know about you all, but all of us literacy coaches here seem to have a book problem. It's an addiction. Our Amazon carts are full. But just going back, I know this was in your pre-work Padlet, but going back to that transparency on that second key, I think that's huge too, because what we may understand, it's communication and delivery can say a lot. So transparency there and knowing exactly what you expect of the students. And that could be in the realm of rubrics or just explicitly stating mentor text or mentor papers to share. I just wanted to touch on that a little. All right, the last tool we'll use for evaluation.
Okay, so the Education Hub is where we got this information. So there are 3 stages of feedback. There's one where we want to feed up and we clear the learning goals. They're clear, they're understandable, they know what to do. Feedback, monitoring their progress is what I'm doing with feedback. And feed forward, helping them to understand and know what to do for their next steps. And there are 3 operations of feedback. A product level, their performance is given immediately. A process level, how it's done, is it transferable, and waiting time, and personal level. It's not task related, and it's fear inducing. So we need to keep those 6 things in mind as well as we're going through, as with those 7 keys.
I love in the video when it talks about it being transferable, because it's great to know that what I'm doing in one class could also transfer to another class. So keeping that in mind, especially for a lot of people that are setting goals for cross-curricular classes, knowing that that's feedback can be an area in which we can touch on that. All right, so all of that to say, those 3 tools are what we're going to use to evaluate this feedback. So should the feedback we're going to give you now, these examples, should it go viral or is it the outtake role? So in the chat box, if you think that the feedback we're giving you, based on the tools, the 3 tools we've offered you to evaluate, do you think that it's awesome? So you may want to put #awesome and it should go viral into the chat box. Or is it part of the outtake role that if you saw this in the classroom, you would not be impressed? Or if this feedback was given to you, you would not be impressed. So #cut. So again, when we see the feedback pop on the screen, your job or role is to reply with either #awesome or #cut in the chat box. So the first feedback we have is, Johnny, you need more examples in your report. Do you think that is, do you think that is #awesome or #cut? I see lots of cuts. Who wants to share their why? Why would you want to take this to the outtake role or make it part of the outtake role? What's it lacking, or how could we make it part of #awesome?
So I feel like Johnny doesn't know what examples to include, or maybe he would have already included them. So he's maybe unclear on what examples are or how he needs to add more in.
I love that, Missy. So this is an easy out for us. Hey, you need more examples. Well, he may have no clue at all how to even add those examples, or he may be even thinking, what examples? Examples for what? He may not even know that he's supposed to be making a point or supporting. And this is actually advice. It's not necessarily feedback. Unless it's preceded by some descriptive feedback, our natural response would be to wonder, why are you even suggesting this? Why do you think I need more examples in my report? So maybe we could change this by saying, taking what Misty had in mind as well, you need more examples in your report in order to persuade your reader to vote for your candidate. Or you need more examples in your report to show me that oil is detrimental to animals. So a little more specific and descriptive. And I want to think you to think about this too. If your ratio of feedback or advice, if your ratio of advice feedback is too high, you can ask your learner, since Miss Wilson just gave you this feedback, do you know how to improve when you go back to your desk? Or do you know what your next steps are when you go back to your desk? And sometimes that's scary, but it helps us remember that sometimes what we have in our head isn't always clearly communicated to the learner. So this will build autonomy, confidence over the long haul, and hopefully they'll no longer rank novices, and they'll be able to self-advise and self-help. So I think that's something here to keep in mind. If you think that maybe you're in reflection, you think, maybe I'm giving more advice than I really thought I was. Let's move on to example 2. Take it away, Linda.
Okay. It's not being cooperative. Just a second.
Do you want to say hashtag cut or hashtag awesome on this one? Go ahead, Linda. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So we have good job, nice work, way to go, superb, awesome. I'm so pleased with your work. What would you do, or how do you rate this one? I'm seeing cut, people calling it praise. It's more evaluative, I think, just to say someone's had a nice, you've done a nice job. Okay, great. I've done a nice job. A nice job on what? What did I do a nice job with? Or superb, at the top of a long essay that you've written and you've poured your heart out on it, and you've got the word superb at the top. What was so superb about it? It would make me think that the teacher really didn't pay that close of attention to what I had done. And they just wrote that because, well, I got to do something. So there you go. But what could we do to make these work? Anybody want to share? How could I make good job or nice work or way to go or superb? How could I keep those and do something with it and make it work for what we're doing?
Goal specific, Wendy says, and I want to touch on that. What I love about that is it could be a personal student goal, so you're personalizing that learning, or as a group, you may say, like today, folks, when I look at your paper, I'm going to be looking for supportive evidence, or I'm going to be looking for your use of commas. So if it's goal specific, it's not as time consuming, and I know exactly what I'm looking for. So I know that especially before the Tennessee rubric came out, I was so guilty of saying, that's awesome work, and felt really good about it. And then realized they have no clue what's awesome. And it came up on reflection, folks, from the rubric. And also when I received that feedback from an administrator who, came in and said, my observation, that was great, but why was it great? And so I still felt really timid and uncomfortable and nervous and anxious about the next evaluation because I didn't know what about it was good. And I didn't know what area I needed to improve on. So, I don't want someone to make a value judgment on me or feel like they are, or feel like they're rating me or evaluating me. And praise, though it feels good in the moment, what does that really mean? I really like your word choice here. Superb use of transitions, spot on. Tina says, explain why it was superb. We need that explicit explanation, that descriptive feedback.
Yes.
So yes, these are more evaluative, as Linda said.
Mhm. You do need that, that little nudge there to help them out, and a little nugget as to what's going on.
And this goes back to when we say it needs to be actionable. Even when you give, we'll call this positive feedback and saying that they did a good job, how can they act on that as well?
Mhm.
So nice work. Okay, I'm going to do this again, but what part of this am I going to replicate and transfer into future work? I don't know. So it goes back to explain why it was superb, just like Tina had said. Okay, let's look at example 3. I was confused about who was talking in the dialogue that you wrote in this paragraph. Do you think this is hashtag cut or hashtag awesome? Ooh, Tina, I'm going to pick on you. Why do you think it's hashtag cut?
I think it's hashtag cut because that is it's like I'm giving feedback about how I feel about it, but it's not giving them an action for them to work on.
Ooh, I like your thinking there. This is one that we have had back and forth on when we've done previous sessions. So I can see your thinking. I would think because it was specific, we could say that it was awesome and it could go viral. We could be a little bit more specific in saying this is one important thing I noticed. But if you change this, it's going to yield a more noticeable improvement. So if you change your dialogue here or make it a little more specific, this will be easier for me as a reader to understand. But I can again see where Tina's saying that might be a little opinionated rather than actionable. Who in here feels, now that you've heard Tina's side of things, would like to hashtag cut or keep it hashtag awesome? I asked that funny. Does anyone want to change their response? All right, I see that. So depending on context is everything. So depending on how the teacher used this, that could explain a lot too. So in this example, I want to say they were being timely and doing this as maybe they walked around and said, hey, as I'm reading this, I'm seeing here that I don't exactly understand who's talking here. So we might want to change that or act on that. All right, let's try our next feedback example. Go for it, Miss Linda.
For feedback number 4, you did that wrong. This is a weak paper. You got a C on your evaluation. I'm disappointed with your poster. Would you consider that hashtag awesome or hashtag cut?
Tina, I love your response.
How rude.
It makes me think of
Makes me think of Full House.
yes, that's exactly what I thought.
And Stephanie always said, how rude. Yeah. So it looks like, oh, we need to cut this. Okay. These are sort of value judgments, a little bit, you know, a little evaluative. It's not really feedback, or not any feedback I would want to use without giving it a little bit more in there. You did that wrong, but I think I would want to explain something to go along with that. It sounds like I'm being very critical. This is a weak paper. And then the last one, I'm disappointed with your poster. Depending on the student, if you said that, you may be in for a lot of tears. So you might want to preface that with something else. But all of these are more evaluative. And if you notice, they're negative, whereas the other ones we did a few minutes ago were all positive. But, you know, this feedback is negative sometimes. And that is what some teachers and some of us have written on papers, or this is a weak paper. We may have written that before on something, but what was weak about it? This was weak in using transitions, but you could or tell them what they could do to make it what they need it to be or what you want it to be. So yeah, I don't really like these, but they're things that I'm sure we've all used before at some point.
Well, I would like to say, and put in my 2 cents here, that I know for sure that I worked with a teacher who took great pride in being able to put, this is a weak paper, or handing it back and saying, this is a weak paper. And I just never realized what made her so happy about giving that sort of feedback. And when I see these as a student, all I would really get from this is they didn't like my paper. I don't know why it's weak. I don't know what I can see. I don't know what I did wrong.
No, you have no idea.
So, I mean, I think we might be more specific in saying, like, almost from the first sentence I was reading, I was confused as to what you were supporting based on your evidence. In your second paragraph, you're talking about this, but you don't say anything about that in your first paragraph. So just a little more specific, of course, and offer evidence to what you're saying and have them offer evidence.
I like what Wendy said, that it would kill learners' confidence. For some, it really would. It would kill their confidence. And you would have to rebuild that and it would take time for them to trust you again, I think. But some, they wouldn't think a thing about it. They'd just toss it and go on about their day. Everybody's different, but for some, it would definitely do that. And we don't want to break their confidence. We do want to help them to get better at their craft. But I think we can do it without hurting their feelings and their confidence as well. So.
All right, let's move on to our next one. I feel your lesson was interactive, well-paced, and engaging for the students. Hashtag cut or hashtag awesome. I think it's hilarious that Wendy's comment said it would kill learners' confidence. Hashtag awesome. Like, we know that's not what you meant, Wendy, but if we go back through and read the comments, that's going to be very comical. You're that teacher I worked with that loved to tell them that was a weak paper. Hashtag awesome. Now, this is certainly affirming. It's affirmation at its best, but it's not just praise. It is saying you did a good job, but it doesn't say you just did a good job. It's specific. It's noting areas in which the teacher performed highly. But though we do say that, I might even go further, which I think it's hashtag awesome, but playing the devil's advocate here, like Miss Bailey did, what was interactive? What part was well-paced? And what part do you think was engaging? How or why was it engaging? So those are questions that I might ask in my evaluation. When they said your lesson was interactive, well-paced, and engaging, well, I get specific, like, well, what part was interactive? What part did you feel was really well-paced? The whole thing, the beginning, my middle, so we've also had some discrepancies in this feedback as well. So in lieu of time, I know we got started late, but we still want to honor your time and the stop time since we failed on our part to have the correct link. So with that being said, I do want to note what Mandy said here. Awesome, but it could be slightly more specific in regard to how it was engaging, which is exactly what I was touching on. I share the same vein of thinking there, Mandy. All right, let's go back to where we started. In the very beginning, you shared 1 to 3 words or phrases that you associated with feedback. What 1 to 3 additional words or phrases would you add to your understanding of this concept now? Would you change? Would you keep? And I know someone, I think, put time consuming, and that's something that we will talk about in the second session. Amy, specific. Right there in line with explicit, consistent, goal-oriented or goal-specific. Individualized, Lynn, I like that a lot. Specific and throughout the process. That's what I want to, one thing that we didn't mention and we normally do you know, oftentimes teachers will say, I'm going to go grade some papers. But what they really mean is I'm going to go offer some feedback on some papers, some edits, and make corrections on these papers. They're not really grading the paper. And so that's the difference between evaluation and feedback. Individualized and a process. Thanks so much, guys, for sticking with us in this hour at the end of a long day. We so appreciate it. We would like to, again, thank you for joining us for this session and look forward to seeing you next session. And we do have homework for you. We have a bridge to practice activity. And I mean, with the rate we're going, I'm sure I'm going to put this in the chat box and something's going to be wrong. So if you will try to access this, we have a bridge to practice activity. And that means we just want to bridge from, oops, I didn't click over here. So sorry that you're looking at the wrong screen. So this bridge to practice activity, we want you to use the link that I just put in the chat to copy the audit sheet, and it has instructions on what we would like for you to do there. And that's just to take some time of reflection and really think about putting this into practice and putting this, the research, the why, the reasoning, feedback into practice, and reflect on your own understanding and work. What kind of feedback are you giving during your classes? And this can be a bit scary. Access denied. Let me work on it. Dum, dum, dum.
I'm so glad you're here, Brandy, because if this were happening to me, I would be like, I don't know what to do.
Panic, panic, panic.
Panic.
I'm okay under pressure. I just hate that it's happened
Yes.
for each link. Okay, if you want to try that link again, folks, hopefully we're up and running. It's working for me, but that does not mean anything. Thumbs up if it came up this time. Wendy's shaking her head no. Still not working? Well, let me show you an example and we'll email it out to you. I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to keep you any longer. Here is what it looks like. It's asking you to take 2 to 3 examples of feedback, tally up your feedback. Actually, folks, this is your wrong bridge to practice activity. So that's why it's not showing up for you. Unfortunately, they have shared the wrong link with us. But thankfully, I have it here. That's why you can't open it. Ta-da! Okay, so we would like you to monitor feedback that you're giving during your classroom. And thinking about Wiggins' 7 keys to effective feedback and those levels of operation, where do you think you stand? And for example, it may be a written piece of feedback that you've given. It may be a verbal piece of feedback that you've given. It could be feedback that you received as well. So think about that. And just 3 examples there, and then reflect on it. As you look at your feedback, were you operating more out of the task level, the process level, the personal level? Do you feel like your feedback was actionable? Maybe it wasn't user-friendly, maybe it wasn't very timely, or maybe you're rocking it, folks, and during your reflection, you realize, wow, I'm doing great here. I'm hitting all of these. So just take a moment to do a little personal reflection. Also, if you will Sorry, I'm blocking it on my screen. We have a survey we'd love for you to do. If you could just use the QR code here to do the survey. If you do not have a QR reader, I will copy that into the chat box. And as soon as you're finished there, and as long as you get access in your email to the Bridge to Practice, which I will share with you as soon as this is over, as long as you get access to that, you are good to go for next session. Any questions? And folks, we know on the feedback, you're allowed to put work on your technology skills. We get it. We thank you so much. As soon as you're finished, you can sign off. I'm going to go ahead and add in the link in the chat box. So if you want to catch it before you go to your Bridge to Practice activity, you're welcome to do so.
Thank you.
Yes, we thank you a ton. Have a great rest of the week. And some of you are going on spring break, so enjoy that as well.